It's great listening to you, but trying to watch my breath for 45 minutes is a waste of time. I can still do it for 2 minutes only. Only a disciplined masochist would want to continue doing it at home. Two minutes would be all right, but longer? Well, 2 minutes and then again 2 minutes, and then another 2 minutes, and then maybe 22 times 2 minutes, and then we've got 44 minutes. Huh? Just have to start over and over again. I don't think one needs to be a masochist for that. That's only if there is negativity in the mind. I think one has to have, well, yes, discipline, that says here, that's true, self-discipline, and an understanding of what it can bring for one. If one has that, I think one will continue. But it doesn't have to be the breath. We have other methods. One can use other methods. Maybe one of the other methods might work better. Maybe the part by part works better. But on other words, 2 minutes and again 2 minutes and another 2 minutes, and eventually it'll be 45 minutes. The contemplations and sweeping are for insight. Can you explain how this practice leads to insight in everyday life? The insight which arises out of the contemplations and out of the sweeping can be used for daily life. It don't particularly lead to insight in daily life. They can be used for that, and possibly one of them will be, to make it short and sweet, impermanence. Is it fruitful to do a contemplation about some subject in everyday life that is on one's mind? Well, usually not, because the things that are usually on one's mind are personal problems, and personal problems are not subjects for contemplation. Personal problems are exactly what they're called, personal problems. And if one practices diligently and continuously, these personal problems disappear. The contemplation on some subject should have to do with universality. If it's a universal problem, yes, not if it's a personal problem. What is the relationship between insight and intuition? Not really. Not related. Insight is a deep understanding of the real underlying truth in the universe. Intuition has usually got something to do with having a feeling for something. I have a very slow digestive system. Even though I'm eating less than in the first few days, I have a problem meditating after the rest period, after lunch and after dinner. Can you suggest another practice? Yes, walking meditation instead of sitting down. Walking meditation, and possibly doing it a little faster. One doesn't have to do it very slow, and it's still meditative. It'll be better than sitting down if there is a problem with that. When you're able to experience a jhana, should you be able to return to it at will? Once one has practiced sufficiently, yes. To become master of the jhanas, one must be able to enter whenever one wants to, jump from one to any of the others, stay in each one as long as one wants to, and leave them when one wants to. At this point in time, we don't aim for mastery. What we're aiming for is having the experience and then anchoring it better. And then it says, could you please speak about kinds of jhana? But I think I did that this morning, number 1, 2, 3, which also at this point of time will probably be sufficient for practice. And so the next question probably is far more than is needed. There's, what does the fourth jhana feel like? What's the insight after the fourth jhana? Well, if one does it, one does know what it feels like, and it isn't really very useful just to talk about it, what it feels like. And the same with the next thing. In order to reach Nibbana, do people have to experience all the jhanas? No, I said that. The Buddha said that one can do it after any of the jhanas. Is it possible to reach full enlightenment after experiencing only the first 3 jhanas? Certainly, but very few people do. It's easier to have 3 jhanas than to be enlightened. Does the fourth jhana always occur after the third? Was usually. Does the fifth jhana come after the fourth? Most of the time. Do people jump from third to fifth without going through the fourth? Yes, they do actually. They do that. Please talk a little more on the concept of equanimity and its application in daily life. Equanimity is not a concept. I don't think that any of the things I've talked about are concepts. They're either thoughts, feelings, or practices. They are concepts in the way that a word is a concept, but equanimity is certainly no concept. Equanimity is the highest of all emotions. And the application in daily life is the opposite of being worried and restless and anxious, and it's also the opposite of being indifferent. Indifference is its near enemy because it appears to be similar. But in itself, equanimity is the one emotion which is a part of the 7 factors of enlightenment. So it's the epitome of emotional stability. Is the satori or samadhi of Zen one of the meditative absorption? Or is it another level of consciousness? Well, satori and samadhi are 2 different things. Samadhi means concentration, and if that's used in any Zen practice, it would denote meditative absorption. And satori denotes the first pass moment. Today I made an amazing experience. I had experienced a deep feeling of peace and calm in meditation. When I sat down for lunch, I was able to bring this beautiful, peaceful feeling up again. I happened to sit between 2 experienced meditators. And now the experience. I was able to link in and join with a peace emanating from them, and thus reinforce and multiply the peaceful feeling in me. Now I am, of course, eager to try this out in real life. What do you think about it? Is this an experience that only works together with people that have experienced third jhana? Well, it would be a bit difficult to go around asking people, have you done third jhana? In fact, I don't think it's advisable. They might think one has lost one's marbles. But what happens is that if one is together with a person who's angry, one can feel it. And if one is together with a person who's peaceful, one can also feel it. And it really doesn't depend on third jhana. It depends on the feeling that person has at that particular moment, that one is together with them. And one would hope that some people here have, in the meantime, after having been here for 8 days, have got some calm and peace within them, and that one can feel that. And yes, one can feel it wherever one goes, whomever one is together with, if one pays attention. And if one let it influence one on the negative side, it's not very useful, because more people in the world are not peaceful. So one would be unfavorably influenced. I notice that lately, as I become more concentrated during a sitting, a sort of bodily surrendering or letting go naturally takes place. It manifests itself as a fusing of all my body parts and features, and then the sensation of weightlessness ensues. During this long progression, however, my posture has changed significantly from when I first sat down. My back has become quite rounded, and my chin is almost buried in my chest. To consciously manipulate my posture seems to impede my journey into seclusion. Would you comment on posture and its relationship to concentration practice? Well, first of all, if there's a sensation of weightlessness, and one can stay with that as a meditation subject, that would be the first meditative absorption. The lightness as opposed to heaviness. It should be a delightful sensation. Usually, when the chin is buried in the chest, it's an expression of not being very focused. So it would be better to sit up straight and start all over again, rather than stay like that. Please, could you explain what you would consider right livelihood to be? Right livelihood is anything that doesn't break any of the 5 precepts and does not support the breaking of any of the 5 precepts. And I will explain those 5 precepts tomorrow in detail. When working in the garden, sometimes I accidentally harm creatures living under the soil. It makes me feel very sorry. What is the best thing to do? Should I wish them a good rebirth? Yes, definitely, wishing them a good rebirth. Since it's done accidentally, it doesn't have the karma of killing. It may have the karma of lack of mindfulness, but it doesn't have the karma of killing. There's no intention to harm. When we do harm, and in the garden, it's impossible not to. There are creatures everywhere. We don't even see them all. Then it is very good to apologize for the harm and wish them well in any which way we want to. Good rebirth is one of them. As long as we have this body and need to feed it, we will accidentally and sometimes even intentionally harm. There's no way out of that. It's a very gross situation to have a body like that needs to be fed 3 times a day. And that's what happens. All day yesterday, a sense of well-being was gradually filling me, from my meditations as well as daily activity. By the end of loving-kindness meditation last night, I felt joyous inside. I went for a walk and felt full of comfort and independent, no craving. I went to sleep feeling that way. In the morning, I awoke in a cranky, irritable mood, and then I got angry at waking that way. I went to morning meditation and got clear and felt better. Then 2 incidents occurred where my heart intentions were not appreciated and I felt worse, lots of impermanence. I sat with this and realized what you've been speaking of today. I saw how interconnected all my actions are, how every time I do something that's even slightly result-orientated, dukkha rears its head. I keep seeing how even the most innocent action often has subtle expectations. Again, I feel better. Recognize, no blame, change. My question after all this is, am I on the right path? And is this in the worldly realm still? Yes, it's the right path of mindfulness. Recognizing what's going on in oneself and realizing that it's possible to change oneself. Everything is in the worldly realm except the path and fruit moments. Even the jhanas are worldly realm. Everything is in the worldly realm because all of that is reversible and also impermanent. Path and fruit is irreversible. So the world is always with us, but sometimes in a more acute way than in others. Does it make sense during the everyday opportunities, whenever one can remember, to return to the touch contact of the breath at the nose in order to sharpen mindfulness and not to think anything unwholesome? That would be an easy practice for me, and also it would help me to interrupt dreaming and fantasies. Yes, it's very helpful to get back to the attention on the breath during the day. In fact, it is usually recommended that if one works at anything, doesn't matter what it is, to at least take 5 to 10 minutes of every hour to stop what one is doing and watch one's breath. Or if one finds it difficult to watch one's breath, to do loving-kindness meditation. One of the things that it will help, it does sharpen the mindfulness, that's quite true, but it will also help one not to feel overwhelmed by one's work and not to think it's so terribly important. Is there sometimes a connection between enthusiasm and greed? Yes, that's very well put. There certainly is. Or let's say there can be. Because if there is enthusiasm to get closer to something, one obviously wants that something. But what we're faced with as human beings is that we are craving. This is called the Kama Loka, K-A-M-A-L-O-K-A, Kama Loka, and that means the realm, the location, Loka, the realm of sensual desire or craving. So that's where we are. And because of that, it's a natural state for us to crave something. Now, we usually say, sort of with tongue-in-cheek, we are practicing because we are craving to get rid of craving. So if one has the enthusiasm for the practice, it's still craving, but it's the kind of craving which will eventually produce no craving. There are many things that I have said and done in the past which cause a lot of regret and pain when I recall them. These are facts, things I've done. What do I replace them with? Can't replace the things I've done. I can replace the regret and the pain, but I can't replace what I've done. The things I've done are the causes, and the effects will be mine, no matter what. There are, of course, always circumstances which change that. But the regret is not useful. What is necessary is to look at the things that one has said and done in the past and see whether one can make amends. If one has hurt anybody and that person is alive, one can apologize. If one has done anything which has harmed them in their material life, one can make amends materially. If the person is dead, one can also apologize and send loving kindness. The apology should not just, in the case of a living person, not just be in the mind, but it should be verbal, or it can be written. It should not just go on as a thought process, but should actually manifest itself. If one does that, then there is a certain feeling of relief. Whether the person that one apologizes to accepts the apology or not is immaterial. It has nothing to do with it. That's their karma. One's own karma is helped by apology. The other thing that one has to do and needs to do in this case is to remember that the person who said and did the things that one now considers unwholesome is not the person that is considering them unwholesome. This person today has a better understanding and therefore wouldn't probably not do those things again. So we have to forgive that past person. If we can't forgive ourselves for what we have said and done, we'll never be able to forgive anybody for what they have said and done. We may imagine we're doing it, just as we are imagining that we can love somebody if we don't love ourselves. That's all imagination. If we don't love ourselves, we don't love anybody. But if we don't forgive ourselves, we don't forgive anybody. So forgiving ourselves does not mean that we now no longer know that those things we said and did were unwholesome. We do know, but we forgive. We forgive because they were done out of ignorance, most likely, one can assume. One can also make a determination never to do or say a thing like that again. That's also useful. The apology is extremely important and can be very, very helpful. I had an experience very recently where somebody apologized to me for something that she said to me when I was 10 years old. And she's as old as I am now, and has never forgotten it. I didn't even know she ever said it, which of course relieved her mind greatly. If there is no sufferer, only suffering, does it mean there's only sound, no producer? No owner. Sound, yes, no owner. And acting is always connected with the me, the relative reality. There's a question mark behind that. Acting would make it a question. Is acting always connected with the me? I presume what is meant is that acting as a profession. I don't know, it doesn't say that, because basically speaking, we're all acting. We're acting out a role. And so, of course, it's connected with me, all this acting. But I think what is meant is a profession of acting. And everything we do, everything we think, everything we say is connected with me as long as we think there's a me. How can it be otherwise? The whole thing is connected with me. That's why we have the methods and the methods of meditation and contemplation in order to shift that solidity of the me, maybe shake it a bit or question it a bit. Most people in the world never question me. Why should they? Everybody believes in it, so why should they question something which is so obviously true for everybody? So everything we do, whether it's acting or gardening or cooking or going for a walk, is connected with me because we think it's me going for a walk. And we don't only think it, we actually know it, don't we? It's me going for a walk. Who else? So there is only sound and no owner of the sound. And that would be quite true. On the first or second day of the course, you said, there are only very, very few people on this earth with little dust in their eyes. Would you explain this beautiful metaphor? Does it refer to the enlightened ones? And what does little dust mean? It's an expression of the Buddha. I'm only quoting him. And he said it after his enlightenment. He said it in a little differently. After he was enlightened, he enjoyed the bliss of Nibbana for a week and decided he wouldn't teach because it would be too cumbersome. And not only that, people would not understand his teaching, and that would be a vexation for him. So it says in the scripture, just like that, would be a vexation because the teaching would be too deep and people wouldn't understand. So then the story goes that the highest of the Brahmas, the highest from the God realms, came to see him and begged him to teach for the benefit of gods and men. And so with his omniscient vision, the Buddha looked around and said, there are some people with little dust in their eyes, and they'll understand the teaching, so I'll teach for their benefit. And dust in the eyes means little dust in the eyes. It doesn't mean the optical eye, it means the inner vision. There are some people, or a few people that have little dust in their eyes. They will understand. So there are a few people, that have a clearer inner vision, and so they can actually make use of the teaching. And this is a good thing to remember for anybody who teaches. Well, this is not a question, it's a statement. The sun glints, is that what it is? On an ever-moving Donau. Because of the teaching, now I realize it demonstrates perfectly arising and ceasing. Very good. Absolutely, absolutely true. End of questions.